This is the Microschool Minute, your weekly dose of microschooling news and events.
In this week's edition of the Microschool Minute, President Trump's recent executive order to dismantle the United States Department of Education has sent shockwaves through the education sector. This bold move raises critical questions about the future of school funding, oversight, and innovation, with potential ripple effects for public, charter, private schools, and microschools alike. The timeline for dismantling the department remains uncertain, as eliminating it entirely would require an act of Congress. While Republicans have pledged to introduce legislation supporting the closure, it's likely to face fierce opposition from Democrats. In the interim, Education Secretary Linda McMahon has been instructed to begin transferring key functions, such as federal funding distribution and enforcement of civil rights protections, to state governments and other agencies. Supporters argue that this decentralization is long overdue. They believe that states and local districts, not federal bureaucrats, are better equipped to address the unique needs of their communities. Advocates for school choice and innovation, including some within the microschool community, see this as an opportunity to foster greater flexibility and autonomy for alternative education models. Critics, however, paint a more troubling picture. Federal funding accounts for roughly 14% of public school budgets. But in states like Mississippi and Alaska, that number climbs well to over 20%. Opponents worry that without federal oversight, these funds may be misallocated or spent on voucher programs rather than ensuring equity for low-income, disabled, or ESL students. Supporters of the effort argue that research actually proves that school choice provides greater equity, allowing each dollar per pupil to go further in making a truly personalized impact. The stakes couldn't be higher as this policy shift unfolds. It forces educators, parents, and policymakers to grapple with a fundamental question. Can localized control truly deliver better outcomes for all students, or will it deepen existing inequities? While the dismantling of the Department of Education sounds like a win for innovation, its ultimate impact will depend on how states handle this newfound power. In a new move, President Donald Trump also announced plans this week to transfer federal oversight of special education from the United States Department of Education to the Department of Health and Human Services, framing the decision as a much-needed shakeup. Trump argued that the shift would lead to tremendous results over time by reducing bureaucracy and empowering local and state decision-making. Supporters of the move, including the United States Education Secretary Linda McMahon, pointed to historical precedent. McMahon emphasized that prior to the Education Department's creation in 1979, special education programs operated effectively under the Department of Health, Education, and Welfare, a precursor to HSS. Critics argue that moving special education oversight to HSS risks shifting focus from education to healthcare, jeopardizing IDEA's goals and protections. This isn't just red tape, said National Parents Union President Carrie Rodriguez. It's a fundamental redefinition of how our country treats children with disabilities. For families navigating the free application for federal student aid, recent disruptions have added layers of confusion to an already complicated process. Website outages, including a multi-hour crash last week, have left many families scrambling for answers. These issues come after significant cuts to the Department of Education's budget, reducing resources for maintaining the FAFSA platform and assisting users. Delays and technical hiccups could lead to missed deadlines, financial uncertainty, and added stress for families relying on federal aid to fund college dreams. To navigate this, families should act early. Begin the FAFSA process as soon as applications open, allowing time to address potential setbacks. Utilize local resources like school counselors, education consultants, or even community forums for guidance. Preparation is key, and for microschool families, staying one step ahead can make all the difference. A federal judge has halted the United States Department of Education's attempt to eliminate funding for 3 critical teacher training programs: SEED, TQP, and TSL. In a landmark ruling, Judge Julie Rubin deemed the cuts likely unlawful under the Administrative Procedure Act, ordering the immediate reinstatement of these grants. This decision safeguards over $600 million in funding that directly impacts teacher preparation and retention efforts nationwide. These grants are more than just numbers on a spreadsheet. They're lifelines that build a stronger, more qualified educator workforce, especially at a time when schools are grappling with a critical teacher shortage. By funding innovative teacher preparation and development, these programs help to ensure that classrooms are led by highly skilled educators. This is a win not just for the broader education system, but for smaller alternative learning models like microschools as well. These personalized, student-focused schools rely on exceptional teacher quality to deliver their innovative, tailored approaches, making this ruling a vital step in supporting their sustainability and growth. With the federal government making waves in education policy, families may be wondering if school meal programs are at risk. Here's the good news. These programs are funded by the United States Department of Agriculture and remain unaffected by the potential elimination of the Education Department. When federal education policies feel like a moving target, families crave stability. Microschools offer just that, small, personalized learning environments that remain untouched by the turbulence of national policy shifts. As federal student loan portfolios move under the Small Business Administration and FAFSA continues to face accessibility challenges, these adaptive schools stand as a beacon of certainty for families navigating an unpredictable educational system. What sets microschools apart is their inherent flexibility. Unlike larger institutions tied to federal funding or bureaucracy, microschools operate on nimble, community-focused goals, and this allows them to respond to changes in real time. In uncertain times, microschools don't just react to challenges, they anticipate them. And for families seeking control and clarity, that mindset makes all the difference. Tennessee is taking a significant step toward expanding educational opportunities for low-income families. Senate Bill number 11, which recently cleared its first legislative hurdle, proposes extending the state's education savings account program to 3 additional counties: Clarksville, Montgomery, Knox, and Rutherford. This initiative builds on the program's existing coverage in Hamilton, Davidson, and Shelby counties and aims to provide more families with access to private school tuition grants of up to $9,300 per student. With Tennessee already piloting similar programs, this expansion reflects a growing focus on educational equity and choice for underserved communities. The defeat of the Children's Promise Act marks a turning point in Mississippi's school choice debate. While the bill failed to gain traction this session, its supporters are likely already signaling plans to revisit it next year. Proponents argue that expanding programs like this is essential to providing more educational options for families, particularly those in underserved communities. But the path forward is anything but certain. The bipartisan opposition to this bill sends a clear message. Any future attempts to expand school choice measures will face significant scrutiny. Republican lawmakers who voted against the act cited a mix of financial concerns, constitutional issues, and pressure from constituents. This unlikely alliance with Democrats suggests that school choice policies, often politically charged, are not guaranteed an easy pass in the state legislature. For Mississippi, this decision could set the tone for the legislative landscape moving forward. Future debates are likely to intensify, especially with growing demand for innovative models like charter schools, education savings accounts, and of course, microschools. At the same time, questions about accountability, funding transparency, and public versus private resource allocation will remain at the forefront of the conversation. Meanwhile, the Utah State Board of Education has made a significant shift, announcing the termination of its contract with ACE Scholarships, the nonprofit tasked with managing the state's largest ever school voucher program. This $82 million program, known as the Utah Fits All Scholarship, was launched to provide families with increased access to alternative education options. However, the contract, originally set to run through 2028, will now end on May 15th due to what officials describe as the complexities and operational nuances of the program. The Utah Fits All Scholarship Program has been a game changer for families seeking educational choice. Offering up to $8,000 in funding per student, the program allows families to cover a range of expenses, from private school tuition to homeschooling resources, and even extracurricular activities. For many, this initiative represents a lifeline to personalized education that better meets their children's needs. But with the unexpected transition, families relying on these funds now face uncertainty. The state aims to secure a new program manager quickly, but the ripple effects of this change are already being felt by those trying to navigate applications, renewals, and planning for the next school year. At the heart of the school choice debate lies a persistent question. Is it constitutional to use public funds for private, often religious schools? Many opponents point to Blaine amendments in state constitutions, including North Dakota's, as a barrier. These amendments, rooted in 19th century anti-Christian bigotry, prohibit state funding for quote-unquote sectarian schools. Critics argue this makes initiatives like education savings accounts unconstitutional. However, the United States Supreme Court has already weighed in on the issue. In Espinoza v. Montana Department of Revenue 2020, the court ruled that excluding religious schools from public benefits solely based on their religious character violates the First Amendment. Chief Justice John Roberts stated clearly that states cannot discriminate against religious organizations if public dollars are made available for private education. This precedent is monumental. It undercuts claims that school choice policies like North Dakota's proposed Senate Bill 2400 are unconstitutional. If a state opts to fund private education, the Supreme Court has affirmed it cannot exclude religious schools from those benefits. This opens the door for broader school choice legislation while ensuring the constitutional rights of families are protected. This week's Microschool Showcase takes us all the way to Columbia, Missouri, that is. While public school enrollment across Missouri has dropped by more than 20,000 students since 2019, Columbia Academy for Learning and Enrichment is forging a different path. This microschool opened its doors in 2023 with just 9 students. Today, enrollment has skyrocketed to 35, a threefold increase. So what's driving this growth? Parents and educators alike point to Kell's innovative approach. Instead of focusing on grade levels, we focus on the next best standard or the next best need in their learning progression, explains Susan Deakins, co-founder and teacher at Kell. This method tailors education to each child's unique learning trajectory, breaking free from the constraints of traditional grade-based systems. With a 10-to-1 student-to-teacher ratio, Kell has ensured personalized support rarely found in larger public schools. As Deakins describes, it's a community where every student is a contributor. They're safe, supported, and fully engaged in their learning. Kell's growth reflects a larger trend, a shift towards smaller, more personalized educational environments. And for many families, it's proving to be just the right fit. If you know of a microschool that deserves a shout out, drop a line and let us know. Thank you for tuning in to the Microschool Minute, your weekly review of microschooling news and events. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you'd like to support us, consider leaving a review. Until next week, happy microschooling.